Hello, family, friends, and loved ones of Thieme. Thank you for gathering today to celebrate the wonderful life of a man who had an impact on each of you in some way. Whether he was your friend, sibling, dad, father-in-law, cousin, or grandpa. I'm honored to be able to share a few words today about my patriotic, race day enthusiast, and peanut and beer-loving grandpa, Thieme. My mom called me this morning with the news that Grandpa had passed away. I was really bummed because tomorrow I leave for cadet field training at West Point, and I knew this meant I would not be able to attend the funeral. I'm grateful that while I cannot attend the funeral in person, I can offer some words of reflection about my Grandpa Tom. Today, I would like to focus on what I will call the 4 loves of Grandpa Tom. His love of family, his love of life, his love of country, and his love of God. First, Grandpa Tom's love of family. Before Grandpa Tom became a grandpa, or even a dad, he was first a son, and a brother, and a twin. He loved his brothers and sisters so much, and his love grew as his family grew. He loved his wife, my Grandma Jane. He was still talking about Grandma Jane with infatuation and true love when I talked to him on the phone a couple weeks ago. He loved his children, my mom, Jenny, and my Aunt Mary Jo and Uncle Tom. And he loved his grandchildren, expressed through his commitment to watching hours of sports games, 4-H fashion shows, speeches, graduations, and more. He would do anything for us, and I know he was so proud to be our grandpa. Grandpa Tom's love for family reached far beyond his immediate family, though. He was best friends with the extended family, all his cousins and many nieces and nephews. Family was an integral part of Grandpa Tom's life. Second, Grandpa Tom's love of life. My grandpa was never one to sit in front of the TV for long. He was always up doing something productive, shoveling the driveway, trimming the bushes, roaming the aisles of Costco, probably stocking up on more chicken broth, Planters peanuts, and Lorna Doones. I know he has been like this his whole life, always making the most out of every day. Grandpa Tom had a great passion for photography, for capturing all of life's best moments. If we sorted through my grandpa's vast collection of photos, we would find pictures from my mom and Aunt Mary Jo and Uncle Tom's childhood at various Army bases in Oklahoma and Germany and Texas. We would find photos from his travels to countries like France, Italy, and Vietnam, and cruises with my Grandma Jane. We would find photos of all of you, the beautiful people in his life. From his colleagues at Eli Lilly, who he still had lunch with every month in Lafayette, to his extended family at Christmas, and his grandkids and their friends at various sports games and school events. You would also find a lot of pictures of race cars, probably more than you would ever care to see. I think even more so than Christmas and his birthday, the Indy 500 was the greatest day of the year for Thieme. One of life's greatest joys, in my opinion, is food, and I think Grandpa Tom would agree. He was always fully equipped with snacks for a drive to Lafayette or for a grandchild's sporting event, always there to offer the same 3 options: a bag of Planters dry roasted peanuts, a yellow package of Lorna Doones, or a stick of spearmint gum. If you were lucky enough to come over to Grandpa's house for a meal, you may have experienced the unbeatable taste of his homemade noodles or his deviled eggs, both of which he spent hours in the kitchen making. All of this was topped off with a tin roof sundae for dessert. I could eat at Grandpa's house for dinner every night. And would a discussion of Grandpa Tom's love of life be complete without mention of his love for beer? Specifically Thieme Wagner beer? I think I remember him talking about how he was drinking beer at family events since grade school. Grandpa Tom was a Thieme boy through and through, and his enjoyment of a nice cold beer was only topped by the fellowship of the people he was sharing it with. Third is my grandpa's love of country. My Grandpa Tom fought dutifully in the Vietnam War, where he led young soldiers as an artillery officer. Recently, my grandpa had a Zoom call with some of the men he led in Vietnam. I was not there for the call, but my mom and aunt said those men spoke about him with such admiration. In Vietnam, apparently they called him Captain Nice, not because he was a pushover, but because he was kind-hearted and fair. He didn't act like he was better than them because he had a higher rank. He wouldn't tell them to do anything he wouldn't do. He was right there with them. They were so young. And one of the guys on the call said he wanted to emulate his life off Captain Thieme because he was such a good man. After hearing about his passing, one of his men shared, "I can never forget his great smile, dry wit, and especially his grace under pressure. Our crew was so fortunate to have Captain Thieme as our battery commander. Rest in peace, sir." Here at West Point, I'm preparing to become an Army officer, to lead young soldiers in a crazy world just like my Grandpa Tom. I hope to be half the officer he was. Tomorrow is West Point's graduation for the class of 2022. My cousin, Peter Schrader, Grandpa Tom's great-nephew, will be following in my grandpa's footsteps as he is commissioned as a field artillery second lieutenant. I told Peter that my grandpa will have a front row seat in heaven, and I know he is incredibly proud of both of us. Freedom is not something you take for granted after putting your life on the line to preserve it and watching your friends and soldiers die for it in war. My grandpa always flew a perfectly cared-for flag in the front of his home, a sign of his patriotism and loyalty to this country. When he was taken to the 24-hour care center, my mom said that the one thing he had to make sure he had taken with him was his Vietnam combat veteran cap. Last night during intermission of my Glee Club concert, my mom texted me to say that Grandpa Tom had just received last rites. In the second half of our concert, we sang all the traditional Army songs, and I thought of him during each one, especially during one called Mansions of the Lord, which is a song devoted to fallen soldiers and a prayer that they all make their way to heaven, to the mansions of the Lord. One verse reads, "No more bleeding, no more fight, no prayers pleading through the night, just divine embrace, eternal light, in the mansions of the Lord." This leads me into Grandpa Tom's fourth and most important love, his love for God. I think part of why my grandpa was such a good officer and leader was his love for Christ, who he knew lived in each of the men he led. Grandpa Tom was a faithful man and was a leader within his family and church, where he was a member of the parish council at St. Boniface and the Knights of Columbus. He raised a strong, faithful Catholic family. Our world should look to my Grandpa Tom as an example for how men can and should lead their families towards holiness and virtue. Today's celebration of Grandpa's life is a reminder that our lives on earth are finite. Let us remember to pray for Grandpa Tom's soul as he makes his way to his true home with God. Grandpa Tom lived a full life. He had an impact on so many people, his family, his soldiers, his colleagues, and his friends. Thank you for listening to me reflect on the life of my grandpa. While I'm sad that I could not attend his funeral, as you watch this, I'm likely rucking up a hill or navigating my way through the woods, probably very lost, or maybe I'm learning to shoot field artillery. And I know Grandpa Tom, or rather, Captain Nice, is right beside me as I do it. God bless you all, and God bless Grandpa Tom.